pandemic. And always keen to do something different, the Star warns Britain could face mass seagull attacks after a crackdown on culling the birds. So Andrew Pearce and Kevin Maguire are here with me tonight. So nearly all the front pages focusing on the budget and particularly the aspects of coronavirus within that budget. There's the Times front page, though. They call it Sunak's Road to Riches, and that's because it's a big spending budget.
Yeah, I really like that front page, and that's part of his Treasury team walking there. And this is the biggest spending spree by a Conservative Chancellor since 1992, when Norman Lamont opened the taps just before the 92...
So nearly 30 years.
Yeah, 92 general election, which they then won against the odds. And he's used the cover of coronavirus to really put the foot on the gas in a way you would not expect a Tory Chancellor to have done, because we've had years of austerity. The deficit has been pared back substantially, although debt has still increased. And a lot of it is, of course, for coronavirus. Just looking at some of the things here. So £1 billion to take small businesses out of business rates. Really important, because some small businesses are struggling already. You just go around parts of London now, pubs are struggling, restaurants are struggling, shops are empty. There's going to be businesses going to the wall.
That's right, as well as people potentially being off sick.
Absolutely.
At the same time.
Yeah, and of course they've announced £2 billion extra to help with sick pay, and small measures like saying doctors will be able to sign people off over the phone because they don't want people going to GP surgeries if they potentially got coronavirus. So it was a bravura performance by this Chancellor. Let me tell you, he's only been Chancellor for 4 weeks. Brilliantly executed. He's a great speaker. He absolutely had the Commons in his palm. In a way, his predecessor, dear old Philip Hammond, boring spreadsheet Phil, couldn't have hoped to do in a million years.
A quick word on that. How important is that performance and holding the attention of everyone there in the House of Commons? I mean, is it just superficial, or does that matter?
No, I think it matters. If you look confident, people will listen to you, and they may believe you a bit more and be buoyed by it. He looks like a young lad, doesn't he, who's falling into the...
we're getting very old.
The job, yeah.
I've got a chance at 20 years younger than us.
Yeah,
but it is, you know, as it was said, read out Dominic Cummings' speech very well. You see through his handwriting. But that Times front page, though, point out that economic growth was going to fall without coronavirus. You described it as cover in the budget. It's almost an excuse to hide other failings, and certainly Brexit, which we saw the cost has been 40 billion so far, and another 40 billion in terms of reduced investment. But the Times front page also points out this Parliament, assuming it goes to 2025, the government will borrow £300 billion. Now, if that was Labour, the Times and the Mail and the Sun, the Express, the Telegraph would all be slagging off Labour for doing this. Now, you can see that the problem for Jeremy Corbyn, and watching him down, I thought he performed pretty poorly in truth, is yes, you can quite rightly say this is an admission austerity failed, 10 years of austerity failed. It failed in its own terms in many ways, because the 2015 target for ending the deficit was missed. It's certainly not going to be ended now in this Parliament, so you can see austerity failed. But when there's some of the spending, and it's intended, yes, to counter the virus crisis, but also to try and cement those blue bricks in Labour's red wall. It gets trickier for you to criticise. You can say it's not enough. You can say you got it all wrong before. You won't repair all the damage. But it's very hard for you to attack as an opposition.
And Labour will say... we won the argument. They're doing what we said we would do. And let's take a look at the Mail as well. Because what do you think, Andrew, that Tories will feel about this? Because it does go against the Tory spirit, doesn't it? To spend so much.
But look, readers of the Daily Mail will be as worried as anybody else about the effect of coronavirus. They don't know what it's going to do, how it's going to impact on them, their homes, whether the Chancellor conceded in the speech that up to a fifth of us may stop going to work. We will work from home. So they will welcome the money for that. But some Tory MPs will have been very uneasy in the chamber today, Theresa May, for instance, was veiled in her criticism because they don't want the Tories to lose their party for the party of financial probity. They don't want to be seen as a reckless spendthrift party.
I think Sajid Javid was
He
made
said
a comment as well, didn't he?
he did too.
Remember, Sajid Javid gave an interview at the Times a couple of weeks ago. He said if he'd been still chancellor, he was going to reduce the basic rate of income tax by 2p from 20 to 18. Now, Sunak hasn't done that, or Johnson hasn't done that. He's kind of targeted the spending, I would argue, much better. You can have criticism of it, but the Mail can welcome it. But you would have at one time, you had a fetish, as the Telegraph did, as the Sun did, as the Express did, a fetish about borrowing. Now that's gone. But you see, all of a sudden, that obsession with getting borrowing down has disappeared. It's now getting it up.
But that spending spree being funded by borrowing on the day in which the Bank of England cut interest rates to their lowest level since the crash in 2008, whereas they're down to a quarter of 1%. So it's never been cheaper to borrow.
So generally pretty positive headlines for Rishi Sunak. The Guardian, though, asks a question, doesn't it? So it's slightly more equivocal. Tories splash the cash, but will it hit the right targets? And there have been some suggestions that although there's this big package to protect businesses and some workers, that there are still those working in the gig economy and self-employed that might not have to support those.
I think it's a good question to ask. It's a legitimate question to ask, because if you look at the distribution of the cash, the poorest tenth really get nothing. Some lose out. Now the richest tenth don't benefit the most. But if you go like those in the sort of seventh, eighth, ninth tenths, as it were, the better off will get most. So that now maybe that's the intention, because all the way through the Cameron Osborne era, that tended to be the case. It wasn't those at the very top, but it was those just below the very top who benefit. Now, I think that doesn't really help those working class voters in those blue brick seats in the West Midlands and the north of England in the Labour Red Wall. It doesn't really help them the most. It will still help people in the south east the most.
But they'll like the fact that fuel duty's not gone up, that booze duty's not gone up, because they don't want to drive. They want to drive people into restaurants and pubs and things. So there are all sorts of bonuses there. But you know what I think this budget has done most of all for Boris Johnson's government? Look, this is a government that's been in power since 2010. The Tories have won four elections in a row. This makes it feel like a completely new government, and that's part of what Boris Johnson wants to achieve. He doesn't want to be seen as part of because he was Foreign Secretary of May's regime. This feels like a completely new government with a completely different outlook.
Just to cut in to talk about the NHS, because when we're talking about the right targets, £5 billion promise for the NHS, but also this suggestion will give you what it needs. And this is a day the WHO has declared the worldwide outbreak a pandemic. We're told to expect the possibility that we'll move on to the next phase in this country of delay. So does it feel like the right action's been taken as far as NHS spending goes?
After the wrong action, which was the tightest financial straitjacket in the history of the NHS, the tightest financial settlement since 1948, because you can't just magic up intensive care beds, nurses, doctors, other people. Now, the NHS has been performing miracles in many ways, been working beyond capacity, but you've seen ambulances haven't been hitting their targets for a long time, A&E the same. So it's not in a strong position to deal with this crisis. And it is a crisis. Now, the money is coming, and quite rightly the money is coming, but we're going to pay a price for it being starved and left on its knees after 10 years of austerity.
OK, and let's very quickly take a look at the double-page spread in The Times, which has a photograph of Nadine Dorris there.
With her mum.
She's with her mum. She's worried about her mum.
Yeah.
Mum's staying with her, and her mum's 84. She's in that target area, and her mum's got a bit of a cough. I think we hear Nadine's recovering very well.
She diagnosed last night, we should say, just in case anyone's missed it, with coronavirus.
But now there's talk. We think that it may be a cabinet minister has tested positive. We don't know which.
Well, no, they've self-isolated and are being tested. There's no result yet.
That's right. We don't know if they've got it. But look, Parliament, there's 10,000 people work there. Lots of tourists go in there. And so it's a hotbed, potentially.
Well, yes. And so what does that image of a stuffed House of Commons today, always as it is during the budget, when you know that one MP has tested positive, is that a strange image to send out there when we're about to go into a phase where we might get more social distancing?
I think it depends on how you approach it. Personally, I'm a great believer in wash your hands, stay calm, carry on. You know, don't go snogging someone you don't know who might have the virus. But at the same time, we've got to. I think we should all try and go to work. But you know.
But you don't think Parliament should take steps to kind of encourage people to...
Hand sanitisers arrived now, finally.
There weren't any yesterday, but I suspect what may happen in Parliament, the politicians will still be there, and they should be, because they've got to keep the government on its toes.
Right.
But I think a lot of the staff there, the 10,000 people who work there, could possibly work from home.
You could stop visitors. You don't need buffets. I mean, a lot of receptions have buffets. I would have thought.
Finger buffets still going around.
Coronavirus is probably
people
the death
diving
of the
into bowls of crisps. Hello, do you wash your hands?
Well, who knows what might change after the Cabinet meeting tomorrow. We'll wait and see. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Coming up, Chris Grayling once gave a shipping contract to a company with no ferries. So Kevin and Andrew are going to be asking why he's been given another top job. That's coming up. Kevin Maguire, and we're going to turn inside the Times next because there's a story about Chris Grayling.
He's going to chair the Intelligence Committee. You'd always be the last to be picked for a pub quiz team. This is a joke. I think Boris Johnson is making sure this committee, which is often seen as the committee, the Premier Committee, scrutinising the security services. And Chris Grayling, the man who gave a ferry contract to a company without any ships, who privatised probation with such disastrous results. People have died, and now it's been renationalised, taken back into public services. Somebody who, when he was the Injustice Secretary, was banning books and musical instruments. Everything he's touched is turned to dust.
Remember, he also introduced court fees, which led to hundreds of magistrates resigning.
So why is this?
It's because he's a mate of Boris's from the Vote Leave campaign. And also in there, and he, of course, he stood down. Was he sacked? Did he stand down from the cabinet? Was he sacked? I can't remember. But Theresa Villiers, who was sacked in the reshuffle, she's another Brexiteer. She's going on the committee too. I don't think it should be in the gift of the government, actually. It should be backbenchers should choose these people.
I agree.
I think.
Now, the Times mentions John Hayes, a former security minister, sitting on it. Mike Penning, a former Home Office minister, who used to be, I think, in the Coldstream Guards and a firefighter for a while. He'd have had wide support if he was chair. But Grayling, it's like a sick joke.
Okay, I'm going to move this on because we've got a couple of stories you want to squeeze in and we've got very little time. Rather good headline. I know you like this.
Great headline. Duped of Sussex. Because, look, he fell for it. Look, he's not the first person to fall for these con men. The Queen has fallen for it. These particular con men also got... Who did they get?
Elton John.
Elton John. But he thought he was talking to the great goddess Greta of the climate warrior. And of course, he wasn't. And he was rather indiscreet, said things like, I'm separate now from the royal family. Prince Donald Trump has blood on his hands over his support for the coal industry. It was rather nice about Boris Johnson, interestingly. But the question for Harry is this. Look, if he'd still been under the supervision of the palace, I suspect that call might have been screened out.
Do you think that's why? I mean, to be fair to him, so many people have fallen for things like that.
Yeah, in one way, you can't blame him. But you do wonder if he's going to have many humiliations now. He doesn't have the protection.
The palace has a great machine. It's a big machine.
And this in the Metro is a follow-up to the Sun story on the page one, The Splash today. But it is a great story. It is a good story.
And in about 20 seconds, we can just take a quick look at the front page of the Telegraph.
Bondage at Cheltenham Gold Cup. Bondage at Cheltenham races.
Don't tie yourself up in knots.
This woman has designed her mask, designed her hat, and I just thought when I saw it, oh my God, it's a bondage party at Cheltenham races.
No.
She's dressed her best.
I used to go to Cheltenham races when I was on the Gloucestershire Echo as a very young boy. I never went on invited to
Okay, I think we'll leave it there, shall we?
Okay.
Andrew and Kevin, thank you.